Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this video is mostly about stretch goals. I say mostly because it's also about Marvel Zombies, a campaign currently running from Command Games, and if you're watching this in the future, or if you're watching this with no context as to what's going on, let me give you some background. And again, it's mostly about stretch goals. If you want to skip to some of that, timestamps down below and everything. But I also want to give context as to the specific frustrations that some people are experiencing, and the reason I'm talking about it now, and kind of addressing it from that stance. And so, Marvel Zombies, Command's 50th campaign, and looking like it will almost certainly be their most successful campaign to date, which is part of the problem, by the way. Part of the problem for the context to why people are frustrated, not actually a problem. But it's currently running, and they hit 3 million day one, which I don't think any Command campaign has ever done until now, which is one of the reasons why it looks like it'll be their most funded campaign to date. And this is not necessarily a surprise. It's combining their most popular game system, Zombicide, and one of the most popular IPs of all time, Marvel, and slapping them together, giving a lot of people what they want, and a lot of people a general sense of frustration that this thing even exists. We're not going to talk about that frustration now. This is specifically about the people who are in it for the campaign, but are frustrated by the stretch goals. You see, what's happening is they broke through $2 million faster than anyone could pay attention to, including themselves. And so they didn't have any stretch goals for the $2 million account. They had a funding goal of $500,000. That was the funding goal. They had $2 million, and they released their first update, which is basically, hey, here's our daily reveal, our daily bugle, because they're using a combination system, something Command has done in recent campaigns, where they are combining a daily reveal with stretch goals. You get both, which some people think means you get more. That's not actually what it means. It just means that Command has a degree of control over the pacing of some of them, and have to work a little harder for the control of the pacing of the other. We're going to get to that. But so, they went ahead and started revealing their daily reveal, which had, 6 unlocks in their first daily bugle post. And then from there, we had stretch goals every $500,000. Every $500,000 there was a stretch goal. For context, if you look back at, and I didn't double check this, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but if you look back at Trudvang Legends, I think there was a point where you were getting a stretch goal every $10,000. Every $10,000 versus every $500,000. And so a lot of people who I think mostly fall into the category of not fully understanding the goal, logistics, and practical realities around the stretch goal system, for any campaign, not just Command, are frustrated by that. Because it looks like Command is once again, and I'm using once again sarcastically, but once again, getting their money-grubbing hands over the stretch goals and denying you what you've earned. If they can give a stretch goal every $10,000, then this campaign where we gave them so much money, where we helped them become who they are, we are the source of Command's success. We're the backers, you should be grateful to us. And I'm being specifically over the top for a reason. And I know not everyone feels that way, but I should take it back. I apologize. I take it back. The sense of frustration is real. I understand the sense of frustration. The sense of frustration is ignoring my over-the-topness. The sense of frustration comes down to the idea that this is clearly one of their more successful campaigns, and it feels like you're being punished for their success. It looks like greed. Oh, so when you get more money, you give us less stuff. That's not actually what's happening. We'll get to that shortly, but that's what it looks like. It looks like, oh, when they do better, they give us less. It just seems so unfair, right? At the very least, when they do better, they should give you the same amount, but they're not. They're giving you less. That is insulting, it is greedy, it is just ridiculous what they are doing. And there's a scale as far as how people feel. Some people feel that way. They feel there should be a stretch goal every $10,000, the same way there was in Trudvang Legends. Others understand it a bit more, but they still feel a bit frustrated. It feels like it should have been every $150,000. Like, I understand you have to pace it a bit, but it still should be within the realm of normalcy. When you move it to every $500,000, we're not going to get enough stretch goals for this campaign. We're just not going to get that. And so they're really being greedy, and they're not giving us as much. And there's a general sense of frustration around the stretch goal system and the daily unlocks and the campaign. That's the background. But like I said already, this video is really about stretch goals. Although, one more tangent before we dive into stretch goals, which is, I highly recommend watching King of Average's video on Command's campaign, Marvel Zombies being the worst deal ever. I recommend watching it for 2 reasons. First of all, the last time I did a video like this for defending Command was way back in the days of Marvel United. And similarly, King of Ravage put out a video, and I put out a different video, different stances, different ways of looking at the same things. And I typically have been a CMON apologist. I typically have been a company apologist. Part of that comes from the fact that I run a company. I understand what it's like to be on the other side of the customer complaints. And it doesn't always mean that one side is right or the other. It just means that there's different lenses and ways of looking at things. And so I often do become a bit of an apologist for companies because I understand that behind companies there's not always just people who are greedy and looking for the next thing. Very often there's people who are just trying to make it. And we could have that debate another time, but that's context. And so we did that back with Marvel United, which is on the table because I don't have Marvel Zombies on the table. And so we're doing it again, apparently. And though this video is a different thing, this video is specifically around the stretch goals. It's not actually about the price point of the game, which is $130 for the base pledge, which is up from $100 for Marvel, It's up from $100 for a Zombicide, Undead, or Alive, and it's up from $110 from Master of the Universe. Meaning it seems like they're increasing their price. And King of Ravage did a video talking about the price increases, not happy with the price increases. I disagree with some of those points, but I understand where it comes from as well, and I don't have any firm information. I'll say there's different factors. I mean, keep in mind that this particular licensing might be, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but we might have Spin Master, Guillotine Games, Marvel, CMON, everyone wants a piece of this pie. We have the inflationary aspects of the world and of shipping. Lots of stuff going on there. Speaking of shipping, we have the general inflationary aspects of shipping in general. Part of the concerns is the fact that a lot of people are seeing the price point on this campaign and seeing the shipping price on this campaign, and it even further adds to the sense of frustration that people have. And then you throw Galactus in the mix, and you have more of a sense of frustration of this $410 all-in price tag with $100+ of shipping costs involved. It just feels like it's way too much money. Not that you have to get everything at all. But I'm going to focus more on the stretch goals. These are all side tangents. If you're jumping here from the beginning, let's finally talk about these stretch goals. Because that's the main point of this video. Everything else is just a backdrop. Stretch goals as a concept of what they're supposed to represent is the following. Not what they do represent, what they're supposed to represent. The idea of stretch goals is the idea. And this still sometimes happens nowadays, we'll talk about it. Is the idea that, hey, we need X amount of dollars to make this campaign. We need $100,000, whatever it is. But if we're printing 1,000 copies of the game, it'll cost us X per copy. If we print 5,000 copies of a game, it'll cost us less per copy, and so we can give that back to you. We can pass that savings on to you because we're doing higher printing volumes, minimum MOQ, minimum order quantities. Because we're doing a higher amount, we have a lower price per unit, and we're going to pass that savings on to you and give you more stuff. What would have cost us, let's just make up numbers, what would have cost us $20 to print for 1,000 units, it would have cost us $20 per unit. Well, now, because we're printing 5,000 units, or even 2,000 units, it'll cost us $18 to print. And that's $2 of extra manufacturing costs that we can throw into the game in terms of miniatures, boxes, different things and stuff going on. So we can just throw those stuff into the game. That's the general concept of the system, and it's not completely without merit. Another factor is the concept of overhead. Same idea, same general idea. Even if you say that the quantity of cost to print a game is the same the whole way through, we also have the concept of overhead. The idea that any game has the actual manufacturing cost, the pipeline costs, all those factors, but then it has the overhead, all the costs that are single that can be extrapolated down per game. And this is often true in smaller companies. If you have a smaller company who's printing a game and they need $50,000 to get it printed, well, $50,000 is the amount they need just to print it. But if they get $100,000, they're still making the same much per game, but suddenly you're actually getting a paycheck. As a designer, as the publisher, as the company, you're getting extra money because all that money that was going to your paycheck, well, there's more the more successful your game is. There is meant to be a profit margin on games, and that profit margin can basically be spread out to the people who need it based on how many games are being sold. The more games are being sold, the more you can cut into the profit margin while not actually hurting how much you take out. Same basic idea, that both those concepts result in the fact that they're giving back savings to you. Where the system doesn't matter, and where it stopped mattering a long time ago, is when the game or Kickstarter campaign or anything is large enough. At a certain point, the concept of minimum order quantities is just not going to matter. With 15,000 people backing Marvel Zombies, that's not really a factor. That diversification of the profit ratio amongst multiple people, again, those singular costs, the designer, the publisher, the designer, the artist, the whatever one-time cost, the molding, all those things, they stop mattering at a certain point. At a certain point, stretch goals do not actually mean more stuff because it practically should. It's just a marketing campaign. And that's what stretch goals very much have become to a large degree. It is a degree of marketing behind the concept of stretch goals, of buzz, of hype, of incentivizing you, the backer, convince your friends to back, buy a second copy, spread the word, do what you need to do, because it will result in more stuff for you. Even though it doesn't necessarily. And there is reality to stretch goals. We'll touch upon that a little bit. I'm not saying stretch goals are completely fake, but I am saying stretch goals are mostly fake. See, the practical reality, and before we get to practical reality, licensing is also a factor here. They have to take into account. Stretch goals are the idea, the promise of stretch goals are the idea that you're getting stuff that wasn't planned. Except there's sculpts, there's art, there's all these things that have happened, and when it comes to licensing, every single one of these things has to have been approved in some way, shape, or form. At least I assume. I don't actually run this, but from typical, licensing agreements, you're going to have to get various things approved, or you're going to be promising things that might never actually show up. And so, these things are planned. These things do have work and energy and time put into them. Stretch goals are a marketing technique at this point. It's not meant to be, oh, hey, you backed more stuff and we got more stuff so you can have more stuff. It's partially a marketing thing. And it's a marketing thing that I personally like. To me, it keeps the campaign exciting. I like that aspect, I do. And maybe I'm part of the problem because of it. But I kind of tune out when you have a campaign that's like, boom, here it is, $80, and this is what you get day one. I mean, I back it, but then I stop paying attention. I'm not along for the ride. There is no ride. The ride was a purchase, and I moved on to the next thing. It's not a critique. It's not a problem. I'm okay when campaigns do that. It's just not a campaign I'm invested in. Versus when there's things coming out. Day 3, there's a new optional buy. Day 1, there's 4 new stretch goals. Day 2, it's something else. It's not that I believe they're actually stretch goals, but it is news. Daily Bugle. It's news. It really is news. It's something new to come back to every single day. Whether it's a lie or not, it's just an incentive to see what else showed up. Was it going to show up all along? Yeah, probably. Does it matter? No, it's exciting to see that new skull. When I'm filming this right now, they just dropped Storm. Zombie Storm. It looks fantastic. I'm very excited about it. But I mean, it was a plan? Yeah, well, actually, that was actually a daily unlock too, so definitely planned. But you get my point. So yeah, these things are very much planned. But the key point that I think is worth knowing when it comes to stretch goals is at the end of the day, once we've accepted some of these things, you can't have an infinite amount of stuff. We have to agree on that. Now, where that line is, that's where we can disagree, but inherently, you can't have an infinite amount of stuff. Using Trudvang as, again, that reference point, when Trudvang had a stretch goal every $10,000, I think it was, I could be wrong. If you had a stretch goal every $10,000 on a $3 million campaign day 1, do you know how many stretch goals that is? Do you know how many miniatures that is? That's what, like 1,000 miniatures? I think it's 1,000 miniatures, right? Every $10,000, add 3 more zeros, 100 miniatures? 100 miniatures, 10 miniatures would be 100,000, 100 miniatures per million. That'd be 300 extra miniatures in the first 3 million. And this is a campaign that's on track to hit, 8, 9, possibly more million. So you think what? That you're going to get 900 extra miniatures? Obviously not, right? Can we agree on that? Can we agree that we're not going to get 900 extra miniatures? Because at a certain point, the price, profit, and ratios just don't make sense. Now, we could disagree on those. We could sit there and say, oh, come on, only deserves to make X amount on their game. Okay. I mean, deserve is a relative term. I'm not running the company. I'm not the one who's sacrificing, taking the risk. I'm not the one managing the employees and having a whole infrastructure and framework to create and have. I mean, one of the things that always struck me as ironic is the same people who hate Command for how money-grubbing they are the same people who cheered for joy when there were even rumors that they were having money problems. Like, pick a lane. Which one is it? Are they money-grubbing profiteers who are just taking all your money, or are they going bankrupt? Which one is it that you want to focus on? Because it seems that neither one's the case, by the way, but we'll find out. Who knows? My point is that I think people just sometimes dislike companies, especially large companies. We've talked about this in other videos. I know that sometimes others agree with me, sometimes they don't. That's okay. That's not the point here. The point is that we might disagree on how much Command is allowed to make or deserves to make. Those are meaningless conversations. But we do have to agree that they're not going to give you 900 miniatures extra, right? Which means at that point, the stretch goals are inherently being paced. And we can acknowledge that. We have to be on the same page that stretch goals will pace based on how well the campaign is doing. Where we might disagree, where we might have a difference of opinion is, well, how much should they pace it? We can have that talk. Let's get to that in a second. But can we first get on the same page that clearly stretch goals will be paced based on how well a campaign is doing, or, and this is the big one, or if you choose not to pace it, then you will be cutting off the stretch goals when you hit a certain point because it no longer is something they're going to give you. Again, you know, if using this example, if we both agree that they're not going to give you 900 miniatures, which I hope we can agree on, then either they're going to pace the stretch goals out, or they're going to cut off where the stretch goals are. You know, you hit $1 million and they're like, here's your 100 miniatures, you got them every $10,000, you got a mini, you're good to go. By the way, no more stretch goals for the rest of this campaign. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I mean, that's the other option, right? Which means I think the basic question usually comes down to, when do you want the extras, the goodies? And they're not extras, you're paying for them, but when do you want to see them? Do you want to see them as fast as possible as the stretch goals unlock? Or do you want to see them as across the course of the campaign? Which one do you want to see? Because there's going to be a finite amount. And then the next question is, okay, what does this pathway look like? How many miniatures do you need to get? Because let's look at Undead or Alive for a second. Zombicide, Undead or Alive. If I recall correctly, not if I recall correctly, if I counted correctly, you ended up with roughly 75 total miniatures extra, 50 heroes, 3 abominations, 22 daily unlocks across the course of the campaign. That's 75 total miniatures unlocked between the daily unlocks and between the stretch goals that they had. And by the way, that campaign, like every other Command campaign, had people complaining in the comments about how slowly things were being unlocked. Now, you might sit there and say 75 is not enough, and that's fine. That's a difference of opinion we can have. But if your concern is that this specific campaign is failing you, understand that we're already on track to hit a minimum of 45, based on what we're seeing. Based on the unlocks we've had already, based on the fact that there's going to be 2 a day for the rest of the campaign, we're on track to hit a minimum of 45, and I anticipate that only getting higher. Not because people in the comments complain and Command therefore change the ratio of how quickly you get stretch goals, but because Command is adjusting their stretch goals based on the pacing of their campaign. Because that's what you do to keep things excited across the whole campaign. My assumption, I don't know this for a fact, I don't know what Command's plans are in their own, boardrooms or whatever, but my assumption is that they switched to having 2 daily unlocks instead of 1, specifically to guarantee you that twice a day across the course of the campaign, you're getting something new, while still having stretch goals. But at the same time, that does mean that that's even further going to add to the pacing of the stretch goals. If you're getting 2 a day, if there's 30 guaranteed across the course of the campaign instead of 15, well then yes, that means the pacing's even further going to drift. What is the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate number they hit? I don't know. I imagine it'll be in the range of 75. Maybe it'll be higher. There's a double box over here, so maybe they're gonna give you more. I believe I saw a comment. Don't quote me on this. I believe I saw a comment from Thiago, from the community manager, saying that they have plenty planned and that something along the lines might be the biggest ever. I don't know for sure, but I assume we'll see 75 or more by the time this campaign is done. If we see 70, I won't particularly care that much. I mean, I like extras as much as the next person, but I won't lose sleep over it. If we see 50, yeah, I'd be disappointed too. But I just don't think that's going to happen. That's not the way stretch goals work. They are designed to pace across the course of the campaign. Doesn't mean that all stretch goals are a lie. No, it doesn't. Even using Command as an example, before I get to Command, using companies like Blacklist Games, I've always quoted them as being a company that gives you real direct stretch goals. They tell you exactly, for them, it's every $10,000. They've made minor shifts to like 15,000, but I feel like with a Blacklist game, you do get real stretch goals. I feel there are some companies that do that, most don't. But even Command, even looking at Undead or Alive, towards the end of that campaign, there were definite stretch goals that were added that there weren't sculpts for. There wasn't art for. They're like, you unlock this thing, we'll show you a picture of art in a day or two. They had stuff like that, because yes, I think even Command, even with all the corporateness and all the whatever and all the plans they have, there are real stretch goals, there are real modifications, there are real adjustments. But the fact that it is a journey that we're on together, the fact that it's a journey that we get to all see and the unlocks we get to see along the way, doesn't mean that it's all real. Some of it's an illusion. Some of it's designed to keep you excited, to keep you invested, to have you looking at your phone. Where are we? What's the next unlock? Boom! We just got. Who's the newest one? We just got Moon Knight. I think we got Moon Knight. Did we get Moon Knight already? I don't know. Whatever it is you get, we just got the new one. We just got that. There's a degree of excitement. There's a degree of journey. There's a degree of showing you all of that, and then some of it's just designed to keep you invested. And then there will be changes. There will be something where there's enough people asking for Squirrel Girl in the comments that someone will be like, okay, we're going to make Squirrel Girl happen. Or maybe they won't. Sometimes there's licensing conflicts. Sometimes things are out of their hands. I just think that you're going to get what you want to see if you're willing to be patient. But things have to be stretched out. Again, it's just the question is, if we both agree that you can't have an infinite amount of stuff, then the only thing we have to decide is how much stuff do we think is reasonable, and at what pace do we want that stuff. And if you don't get it, if it's not enough for you, by all means, make your voice heard. Ideally politely, but also voting with your wallet. Hey, come on, really appreciate the campaign. It's been a great journey. Honestly, I think that the amount of stuff you got, the amount of stuff you gave in this campaign didn't feel like it was as good a deal as in the past. I'm personally not in because of that, but hope everyone has fun along the way. Like, I mean, speaking as a business owner, I can tell you that the type of feedback I respond to is the type of feedback that is polite. The type of feedback that is aggressive, that's in my face. I mean, once somebody's just not happy, like, if people are aggressive and antagonistic and rude and they're difficult, there's less investment to dealing with those people. There's less investment to making someone who's not happy, happy. Be polite. Be direct. Give feedback. But give it in a way that makes sense. The one misstep that I do think Come On did make, the one misstep I think that they really did make, and by the way, this entire video when I say Come On instead of Simon, they go back and forth. They've gone back and forth in the past on how to pronounce it. I tend to just, use one in a video and then stick with it the whole video, and sometimes I change it. So I've been saying Come On the whole video, just Simon, Come On, whatever. But anyways, the one misstep that I think they did make is I think in the first daily unlock that they had, the first daily bugle, because he had just said $2 million, I don't think they made it clear. I mean, they didn't make it clear. I think they should have made it clear that the fact that you got 6 on day 1 was something you should not expect going forward. I think that added to the frustration. The fact that you had these stretch goals that had a $500,000 pacing attached to them. But then, people were like, okay, great, but we just got 6 unlocks in the daily bugle thingy, and so we'll get a bunch more. And then they proceeded to drip them out one at a time. Now, in hindsight, I think that's because they were like, hey, you just had $2 million, here are all the stretch goals that were going to be stretch goals, we're just going to give them to you in the first daily bugle unlock. Maybe that was their plan, maybe it wasn't, but regardless of whether that was the reason or not, they should have made it clear to people, just so you know, the future daily bugle unlocks are one at a time, setting expectations, but hey, don't worry, we got you covered. Communication is often part of the problem. Communication often is, and I know I'm not saying this Come On should communicate more in the comments. Again, going back to that difficult customer part, if you respond to every single person who's saying they want more, you don't actually end up appeasing them, they just feel that they are being responded to. And so I don't think you respond to the people who are upset and angry and being aggressive about it. I think you put in the occasional comment here and there saying, hey, we hear you, we're doing what we can, we'll be in touch and all of that. I think there are ways they could communicate more, but to most of the people who are communicating, I don't think that that Come On should or does communicate to them. Where does it leave us? That leaves us basically stretch goals. A quick summary of everything I talked about. Stretch goals are a lie. They're mostly a lie. Not always a lie, but they are mostly pre-planned. They are mostly going to be a certain amount of stuff that is given across the course of the campaign. Some campaigns, especially smaller campaigns, have more real stretch goals because they actually have to decide whether they're going to upgrade to dual layer boards, whether they can afford that. Larger campaigns generally don't have that structure. Most things are pre-scripted as far as what will be in your game. At that point, the question is, how do you pace the unlocking to manage that pacing, to manage that communication, to get people excited while not having them frustrated at any given point? You, as the backer, may or may not be okay with that final amount that's in your game, and that's the point where you get to vote with your dollar, with your wallet. And that's basically it. I hope this was helpful in some way, shape, or form. This is one of many videos we'll be doing talking about Marvel Zombies across the next 2 weeks. This is one of those things. I like Come On as a company. I like Marvel. I like zombies. I like Zombicide. I don't like zombies in particular. I like Zombicide. And so this is probably going to be several more videos. There'll be a full campaign recap towards the end of the campaign, at which point the next day they'll probably release their all-in. That's what they typically do to me. There'll also be a full video explaining to you, I need to wait to see how high the price goes, but going through why I'm willing to back it instead of a PlayStation or something like that. There's an interesting conversation to be had about the value of this game and what you should or shouldn't get. Should or shouldn't is up to you, obviously. I'm saying in terms of the thoughts and processes that go into deciding whether to get a game, whether to let yourself get something that is ridiculously expensive, and it is ridiculously expensive. I mean, if you get the core pledge, not that bad, but if you're getting all of it, well, it's a lot of stuff to get. But yeah, there'll be a few videos around this subject in general over the next 2 weeks. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you find this entertaining and helpful, and as always, have a good one.